Thank you. Thank you, and thanks to the previous speakers for giving me a few extra minutes to talk. I always like to go on and on, so fair warning to everyone. My name is Jason Politi. I'm the CTO at Verve Therapeutics, and I'm going to talk to you about our mission, which is to transform the care of cardiovascular disease through our single-course gene editing medicines. Just a standard disclaimer, I'm an employee of Verve, and I'm going to be making forward-looking statements during this presentation. So I know a lot of the companies here are focused on rare diseases. I've worked on a lot of rare diseases myself. Verve is actually going after kind of the opposite. We're looking at atherosclerotic cardiovascular disease, or ASCVD, because I'll butcher it every time I try to say that word, which is the leading cause of death worldwide. So there's hundreds of millions of patients that are suffering from this disease, 15 million deaths per year. It's the plurality of deaths in Europe. So let's start with the basics. What is ASCVD? Really simple. It's a buildup of cholesterol over your lifetime. As it slowly builds, there's a deposit of plaque on your arteries. Eventually, over time, this leads to a clot or a blockage, and that causes a cardiovascular event like a heart attack. And elevated LDL, or low-density cholesterol, is the primary cause of ASCVD. So a simple way to approach it is to say, okay, how do we reduce ASCVD? It's lower blood cholesterol as low as possible for as long as possible, and bring down the cumulative exposure to LDL cholesterol over a lifetime. So we have drugs that treat low cholesterol. Their statins have been around for a very long time. We also have new therapies like PCSK9 inhibitors. They're capable of lowering LDL cholesterol by 40 to 60%. So what's the unmet need? It really comes down to adherence and the fact that these treatments are needed over your entire life, decades of treatment. And the reality is, in the real world, patients don't stay on these therapies. They go on them, their cholesterol comes down. In the US, maybe you go off your insurance, you change jobs, you lose your job, and you don't have reimbursement, or in other ways, you just decide that it's not for you, you're statin intolerant, or there's some other reason why you go off of it. And that's the reality. Only 50% of these patients are actually on a statin, and 50% are not. And there's a growing market for PCSK9 inhibitors, but it's still a very low level of patients who are eligible with ASCVD are actually on a PCSK9 inhibitor. And the other statistic here is that up to 50% of patients will discontinue their medication within the first year. So these treatments work, but in the real world, they don't work. And so what happens? So over time, there's a higher exposure to because of this non-adherence, and it increases the risk of a cardiovascular event by more than 40%. And this is what's happening over time. It's accumulating as you age. At some point in your life, you could, if you're not on treatment, get to this high-risk threshold, and at that point, you're at high risk for a cardiovascular event, like a fatal heart attack. And that happens, as we saw, it's a leading cause of death. So it happens a lot. So what if we could durably lower the cholesterol level using a single course treatment, keep it low for the rest of your life, and then that would bring down the curve so that as your cholesterol is accumulating at a slower rate, you never reach the high risk threshold. And so that's the premise behind what we're doing at Verve. And our first program is based on the PCSK9 gene. So let's go into a little bit of background on that. PCSK9 is a gene that is mostly expressed in the liver. There are individuals in the world who are lacking the PCSK9 gene. So these natural occurring variants were found actually in the Mediterranean, so right around here. And they're characterized by lifelong low levels of LDL cholesterol. This gives them a protection against any ASCVD, and there are apparently no negative side effects from having this gene turned off. So it naturally occurs, it's safe, it protects them from heart attacks. And so we asked the question, could we develop a single course gene editing treatment that would mimic this natural occurring genetic variation and protect patients against ASCVD? So that's the premise behind our first program. And we developed our first product, which is an IV infusion of lipid nanoparticles containing our gene editing payload. The editor is given as an IV, it's transported to the liver where it turns off the target PCSK9 gene. And then that in turn lowers the amount of PCSK9 protein that's expressed in the blood, leading to lower cholesterol. And it's expected, because we're making a change at the DNA level with a sort of next generation gene editing, next generation form of CRISPR, where we make a single base change, we're expecting this to be a durable effect that can last a lifetime. A little bit more detail about the product. So it contains 2 RNAs. So one is the mRNA that encodes the base editor that makes the change to make the edit. And then there's a guide RNA that brings the editor to the right gene, in this case PCSK9. And it's encapsulated in a lipid nanoparticle. And the LNP also contains a GalNAc ligand. It's a proprietary LNP. Normally, LNPs are absorbed into cells and hepatocytes through the LDL receptor. In our case, we have another pathway, which is the ASGPR. That's the GalNAc receptor. So 2 pathways to get in, and we think this will be a best-in-class LNP formulation. So we took this product into a phase 1b trial, and the design was simple, single ascending dose, starting with 0.3 mg per kg, going up to 0.45 and 0.6, and a 4th dose that we're dosing right now. It's a single infusion, and then we follow patients post-infusion. We see the effect that we're looking for after 28 days, and then we follow the patients for many years after that. And on Monday, we showed the results from our first 14 patients. So it was across these dose levels. 0.3, we had 4 patients. 0.45, we had 6 patients. And 0.6, we had 4 patients across the dose levels. So I'll give you a quick highlights of the results, but there was a full presentation and a webcast that you could view from Monday's release. The results were great. I don't know, I know I'm not really supposed to say that. I was amazed at what I saw and really pleased with the results. So the safety showed that it was well tolerated across all dose levels. No treatment-related SAEs, no clinically significant lab abnormalities, no cardiovascular events. And across all 14 participants, there was only 1 infusion-related reaction, even at the highest dose. And this IRR was really transient and resolved with just simple Tylenol. A little more detail on the safety. So two of the markers that we look for from a safety perspective are liver changes and then also the platelets. And that's typical of any LNP product. In our case, we saw ALT really little to no change in ALT, and for the most part was below the upper limit of normal. And then in the platelets, we saw a pretty consistent response where all the results stayed within the normal range for platelets. So on to, did it work? Yes, it did. And we saw a dose-dependent response and a reduction in the PCSK9 protein here. So on the y-axis, we're showing the reduction in PCSK9. So remember, we're making an edit to try to turn it off. And so in this case, we saw reductions of up to 60% in the PCSK9 protein. And we wouldn't expect it to be 100%. It's mostly expressed in the liver, but not only in the liver. And in this case, at the highest dose level, we saw a 60% reduction from baseline. And so with this lower level of PCSK9, as expected, we also saw a reduction in LDL cholesterol. So the y-axis here is showing percent change from baseline in the LDL, and we saw up to a 53% reduction in LDL. So maybe I'll just pause on that for a second and say, this is the result that I was hoping for, and I hope it continues. Obviously, this is a small number of patients. We have to keep dosing. But the concept here is pretty amazing to me, and it was something that I had to ask a few questions about when I was first interviewing at the company 4.5 years ago. One time, you go in for a one-time IV, and in theory, the rest of your life, you could have 50% cholesterol forever. That's it. And that would be an amazing accomplishment if it really holds all the way through commercialization. A lot more work to do, but it's really promising. So these are the milestones that we had planned for the year. We've been able to check off the first milestone. This is an older slide, but we can now update it and say we got the initial data. Final data is expected in the second half of the year. With that final data from the dose escalation, we're going to deliver an opt-in package to Lilly. They have the ability to opt in for co-development and co-commercialization rights. And so they'll have a decision we're expecting by the end of the year. And then moving forward, we'll be able to complete our dose escalation and transition to a phase 2 pending regulatory approval by the end of the year. And then just to answer one more question that comes up from investors a lot is, are patients going to want this and are physicians going to prescribe it? And this is a study that we did in a couple different patient populations. I won't go into the details, but just suffice to say, we said, what if this product with the profile that we have could be commercialized? Is this something you would be interested in? Do you think your patients would be interested in it? And you can see in both cases the plurality of patients who would be treated with a PCSK9 inhibitor or an antibody or an oral were compared against our product, and we came out with the highest percentage interest and intent to treat. So the quote is over on the side. Who are the patients that are really going to benefit the most? Younger patients, for sure, because we're giving this one time, and then they don't have to keep up with it for the rest of their life. So it should be an enduring effect and benefit the younger patients. Remember, that curve will stay lower for longer. And then for people with very high LDL, it eliminates the question of whether they maintain their therapies and allows them to stay under control quickly. I just want to take a couple minutes and talk about pipeline programs. So the PCSK9 program addresses LDL cholesterol. We have a second program that's also in the clinic for ANGPTL3, which addresses triglycerides and LDL on top of what the PCSK9 program can do. And then there's an Lp(a) program that's also partnered with Lilly in early research. So yeah, that's what this shows in the pipeline. The first two are in the clinic. Lp(a) is in IND-enabling studies right now. So 2024 was a year, this is an older slide as well, but I wanted to go back to it and say we accomplished a lot in 2024 around executing on our programs. We're starting to see some of the initial results in 2025, and as I mentioned, for PCSK9, we have to follow through and keep the momentum going. ANGPTL3 will also have a readout in the second half of the year, and for Lp(a), there's a milestone that we got and a milestone payment that we got for a development candidate that we had nominated at earlier this year and achieved the readout from Lilly. So a lot of exciting work, really good momentum behind what we're doing, and high potential for future success. Thank you. Any questions? We have time. If you have any questions, find me after.